my name's Charlie and welcome to my channel and welcome to this video. So today we're going to be talking about goals. So I'm going to be reflecting back at the goals I set for myself last year, which I will link that video in the description in case any of you are interested in watching that. I will quickly go over that now, and then also looking at the goals ahead for the year that I'm setting myself. For me, like I'm never too hard on myself with goals, but I do like to have I'm a list ticker. So I like to sort of reflect and to go through things and to have something to sort of like aim at. So yeah. So let's have a look at how I've done. Last year, I know I'll go to my StoryGraph, and in terms of reading, I read when I looked on StoryGraph, I finished 199 books last year, and thought that's equates to 49,358 pages, which does seem like a lot, but actually in reality it's about 5,000 more pages than I read the previous year, because I found last year I was reading a lot more poetry and graphic novels, and I also included picture books last year on my StoryGraph when I've never done that before. So just have that for context. I think it said on my, here, if I looking, I'll have the stats, I'll have my little image thing on the screen going by so you can look what I've done. I've got my first book last year was Meaty by Samantha Irby. My last book was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Then I think my longest book was Nickleby, sitting at about 800-ish pages, by Charles Dickens, obviously. According to my stats, the genres I spent the most time on were literary, LGBTQIA, contemporary, and fantasy. I don't know how much stock you can take in those genres, but just to give you an idea of the kind of books I read. The book that took me the shortest to read apparently was Zori by Laird Hunt, and then the book that I read that in a day. The book that took me the longest to read, as you can see, was The Sleepwatcher by Rowan Hisael Buchanan. And that took me 44 days to read. I started it halfway through October, and then obviously before my holiday didn't take it away with me, and then obviously holiday happened, life stuff happened, if you know you know. So yeah, then it took me a little bit while to get back to it. According to this, the authors that I read the most were obviously my lovely friend Charles Heathcote at the beginning of last year. We reread like the Doris books. So yeah, if you want to watch, I'll link some of the videos for that in the description as well. And then also I read 4 books according to this by Kay O'Neill. I think I reread all the Tea Dragon Societies, and then possibly maybe I read Princess Ever After, I think. And then also I read obviously reread Talia Hibbert's books, because I was part of the Sister Along, which was obviously mainly hosted by lovely Victoria from What Victoria Read, and I will link all that in the description as well. According to this, my average star rating was 4.9. That seems about right to me. And yeah, you will see all of my 5 stars and the pictures. So yeah, it said February was my best reading month at 4.43 stars. I feel like maybe it's because like at the beginning of the year you kind of got a bit more invigorated with your reading, I seem to find. So I think that's happened before, that February has been a higher rated reading month. Let me know what your highest rated reading month was last year, because it's just interesting to see in the comments. Let me know. And then it said that September I actually read my most pages. That's not surprising, because I read a book a day. I did a shorty a day for Shorty September, and that was really, really fun. So I read 5,838 pages. Normally in a month I would say I read, for those of you that don't know, I normally read about 4,000. Sometimes, like, I had been reading from October to December, sort of 2,000-ish pages a month, but obviously due to times and stress. But yeah, that's just normally where it sits, about 3,000 to 4,000. So those are the main ones. In terms of my goals, I set last year, I set the diverse spine reads, and I wanted to read at least 5 of them. And from that, I think I did read 5. I read Memorial by Brian Washington. Again, that was one of my first books of last year, and I really enjoyed it. Quite ironic, because then at the end of last year I read Family Meal by Brian Washington, and again I thought it was a really good book. I feel like I enjoyed Memorial slightly more, but maybe it's because obviously with Family Meal I was expecting something different based upon the blurb possibly, but I still really, I love Brian Washington's writing, and I want to read, I think there's some short stories by him. I think he wrote a lot, I think. Correct myself if I'm wrong on the screen. Yeah. So yeah, then I also put Against the Loveless World by Susan Abel-Howat, which I read and I loved. I thought that was obviously a very powerful book, and obviously, so I read that again at the beginning of the last year, and obviously considering what has happened in the world, especially, yeah, that's like a very relevant book. So I highly recommend that book if you haven't read it. I had Severance on the list. I still haven't got to that. I feel like I really want to get to Severance at some point this year. But maybe. Then I read Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. That was really good. I read that when I was sick with COVID. I still haven't got to any Toni Morrison. That was on my list. I tried Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and I just couldn't get into it for whatever reason or another. I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I thought that was very powerful, a really good book. And then the only other one on that list I read was Chlorine Sky. So yeah. So I think I read that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5 out of the 10 on the list. I have actually, because I wrote Suitable Boy on that list, and I'm going to be reading that soon. I'm starting that this weekend, hopefully with a lovely bunch of booktubers, and not well, booktubers, lovely bunch of people online, and I don't know, I'll link something, and I'll link the Lindy and Jolene's channels in the description, because they're hosting the read along of this. So, or the group read of it. So, right, then my other goals were, I had a 2023 must-reads. So these were books that I just wanted to get to, and I read, I think I got to all of them bar one. There was a few DNFs. Again, Against the Loveless World I read, Memorial I read, Saltwater I read, Black Sun I read, and I also read Orlando. I DNF 4 of the 12. 7 out of 12 books isn't too bad, and including, well, not including all the DNFs, obviously. Then I wanted to read more non-fiction, and then in fact I actually did. I read, I think I read about a quarter of my reading last year was non-fiction, so I was very pleased with that. Right, I said on my list I put the Dickens Mega Along. That was one I sort of failed with. I started really well in the year, but I think I just got overwhelmed with like women's prize reading, and so that was one. That's an also one of the things on my list was library books. I wanted to read at least 10 books from my library last year, and obviously I surpassed that. I read loads of books from my library. I don't know what the actual figure of the library books are. Editing Charlie can put that on screen. Thank you, Charlie. Then I put, this is goal number 9, is another one that I failed on, which was to reduce my ebooks by at least 5. That did not happen. So last year I was added to a lovely group chat, the Waffle group chat, which for a lovely bunch of ladies on Booktube, and I'm going to blame them for that, because it's not their fault actually, it's my fault because I'm completely responsible for myself. But yeah, I just added loads of books because we were all like sharing. I think we got a little bit excited, a few of us on the chat, and we're recommending books. So therefore I just added loads and loads, and I don't really mind. It's fine. That's fine. I don't mind about failing that one. Then we've got, I wanted to read books on your, so I had a read or unhaul project, which obviously I did actually read or unhaul every single one of those books. The ones that I read, again, these are ones that have recurring themes, are Memorial, Against the Loveless World, Orlando, The Poisonwood Bible I loved. I read some Terry Pratchett, that was on there, and if you were to see my favourites, I loved Terry Pratchett last year. I discovered Terry Pratchett last year and enjoyed his writing. I read Around the World in 80 Days, Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes, which again was a very powerful but a really good book. So if you haven't read Not Without Laughter, I do recommend that book. And then I think the rest were DNF. So I DNF'd Maggie O'Farrell's The Hand That Held Mine. I DNF'd Commonwealth by Anne Patchett. I just couldn't get into it at all. I DNF'd The Force of Nature by the lovely Jane Harper. I DNF'd Master Pip and The Deep Blue Between. So yeah, those books are off my shelves. So I am definitely going to be doing that challenge, spoilers for ahead, this year. And the last challenge that I talked about in my goals last year was the Native Lit challenge, which out of those I did the under 200 pages, the recommended to you, the Indigenous author outside of North America, book that has illustrations, new release in 2023, a book you already own. So I think I read 6 of the 9, I think, which I think I'm going to count that as a tick, I would say. But also, one of the actual other things I did, 2 other things I did with my reading last year that I wanted to do was read Booktubers Favourites, which I did, and I found some amazing favourites last year from that. Speaking of which, so what I did was I basically watched a load of Booktubers videos, and then I wrote loads of people's favourites down, and yeah, so that's how I found it. But the lovely Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot has also done that exact same thing for last year's. So if you want to go and watch that, I highly recommend checking it out, because it's really interesting to see what everyone's favourites were. So yeah, check that video. But the favourites I would say that from the Booktubers faves that I loved especially was Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black, Tomorrow I Became a Woman by Audrey App. I'm going to say Legends and Lattes, and was another favourite from other people's favourites. Against the Loveless World, The Poisonwood Bible was a favourite, Secrets of Heartwood Hall, which obviously you guys know how much I love that. That was one of my favourites of the year last year. Yeah, those are my main best books from looking at Booktubers favourites last year. So yeah, quite happy with that. And then the experiment of going through and picking a favourite book for each month I enjoyed as well. So yes, that's last year's reading. Now looking ahead at the reading year ahead for 2024, I shall show you my goals. This year I've put, my first reading goal is to read big books. So I want to read some big books this year. Obviously not all my books will be big books, but I want to focus on doing at least 5 books that are 500 pages or more. I don't know whether I did that last year. I feel like maybe I did, but I know that putting the focusing on big books, I just love reading big books. They're always often they end up being favourites of the year when I do read them and take the time, because so yeah, that's just one of my goals. And I started the year quite well because I read Fane this at the beginning of the year, which I'll talk about in a minute for something else. So yeah, doing okay with that one already. As we sit at the beginning of February. Then I've got reread. I want to reread 10 books. This may be a little bit tricky because it's sort of going against one of my other things I'm gonna do, which again I'll talk about in a minute. But I love rereading, and I know I always get so much, I feel like it always adds something extra to my reading year when I do that, and when I treat myself, it always feels like I'm nourishing myself when I do a reread. So yeah, I haven't done it in January, but I do plan on rereading some books in throughout 2024. I put reread at least 10. I feel like that's doable. I think I reread about maybe 15 books last year, and again I loved doing it. So a new thing for this year that I've put on here, this is another thing focused on self-care. This is the Brooks Boost books. So for me, this is my own personal thing that which you're welcome to join them if you want to, but for myself I want to focus on having books that boost my soul, and so either cozy books or books about self-care. So they could be non-fiction books, whether they're a reread that to sort of soothe myself in some way, I don't really know, or rereading a favourite book. It doesn't have to always be it doesn't have to always be cozy, because sometimes guys know I do the heart books that tug on your heartstrings, so and destroy you a little bit. So yeah, it could be something like that. But yeah, Brooks Boost books, that's going to be a thing, and I want to try and do, what have I got on here, maybe 10 Boost books. 10 is a number, so that's one a month. That gives me 2 months grace. Then prompt number 4 I've got for myself is the Charlie challenge books. So I will link in the description a video that I did with Charlie last year. We did for the Christmas crackers, we set ourselves, I think it's 10 books again each, and then what happens is we pick a book for each other out of that book stack. So January's book that Charlie chose for me in December was A Caledonia by Elspeth Barker. This is a sort of like, it's like historical fiction, kind of a little bit of a mystery in here. It's kind of blends genres, but yeah, and I think it's obviously set in the north. But yeah, this was one Charlie chose for me, and yeah, I read this for January and I did enjoy it. The book that Charlie has chosen for me for February is The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimmons. So this is a queer romance, I believe. So yeah, I'm excited to read that in February. And then obviously I will let you guys know what other books Charlie picks as we go. But yeah, I'm excited for that challenge, and I know that it'll help get me through some more books on my shelves, obviously. Then linking in with that, I've got a read or unhaul project, which I'll quickly run through the books on that list. I think I've got quite a few because I added quite a few because me and Charlie are trying to like read our shelves this year and try and get our TBRs down. In case you don't know who Charlie is, it's Charles Heathcote. I talk about Charlie all the time, so you must, guys, probably a lot of you will know. Right, I've got 17 books from my read or unhaul project. And the idea obviously is I either read these 17 books by the end of the year or I unhaul them, because these are books that have been sitting on my TBR for a long time, or books that I've been wanting to get to for a while. So yeah, here we go. The first book is Daughter of Fortune by Isabel Allende. The second, I'm not going to tell you any of the premises of any of these, I'm just going to run through the names of them. Then I've got The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And then I've got Britt Marie Was Here by Frederick Backman. Then I've got 10 minutes 38 seconds in a Strange World by Elif Shafak. I'm excited to read that because I enjoyed The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak last year or the year before. Then I've got When I Sing Mountains Dance by Irene Solar, a very short book. I think it's a piece of translated fiction. I've got The Vegetarian by Han Kang, another piece of translated fiction. I only got The Vegetarian last year, but I really want to get to it this year, so I can't see myself not reading it. It's just I put it on this list to sort of like make me read it quicker. Then I've got Washington Black by Essie Adjudjin. Right, then I've got Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Tien. Then I've got The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Owl. I already have unhauled that one because I started it and just couldn't get into it. I may well revisit it, but if I don't revisit it by the end of the year, again, it's off my list. Then I've got Frostheart 3. This has been sat on my shelves for so long, and I think it's because I enjoyed the first book, but the second book I didn't, in the series I didn't enjoy quite as much. So it's kind of like I want to find out what happens to the family. This is a middle grade book in case you're not familiar. I'll put a picture on screen. Yeah, so that's that one. Then I've got Daisy Cooper's Rules for Living. Then I've got You'll Be Safe Here by Damien Barr. Property by Valerie Martin. I'm also planning on doing this for the Ben Reads Good challenge. I'll talk about that in a bit. I've got Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Byron. The Heartbreak Boys by Simon Green. Simon James Green. Again, on screen. And then I've got Blackfish City as well. So yeah, those are the books that I want to read or unhaul by the end of the year. Then we've got the Read Good challenge. I will link... for this, I will, this is the lovely Ben from Ben Reads Good, who's doing a wonderful reading challenge this year. There's a link on StoryGraph that you can sign up, and I will also link Ben's video talking about it. He's got some really fun prompts, one a month, and he's got all this stuff on Instagram that you can like fill in with graphics and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited to do that. Like I said, I read the first book I read for the challenge. I read Fame by Anne-Marie MacDonald, so that was my Anne pick, so it was for Annuary. February is Fever, something to do with fever, and it's like read a pandemic or a post-apocalyptic book, which I have got my eyes on several different books for that. So yeah, but yeah, I'm excited to take part in that. And yeah, then I've got two like reading challenges to focus on Indigenous books, which obviously, as with all of different, like I like to read them throughout the year, but this is just to help me like focus on that goal. And we've got the Stoodus Readathon 2024, and then we've got the Native Lip Challenge. These are both Instagram challenges, and I will link if you're interested in joining in on them. I will link all of the prompts and things like I'll link the Instagrams below if you're interested in checking that out. Then I've got goal number 9 is to simply read 5 non-fiction. like as with last year, I know that when I read non-fiction and I take the time to read non-fiction, I always rate it higher. I just seem to be better at picking non-fiction books for whatever reason or another. So yeah, definitely want to continue that this year. And again, goal number 10, as with the library books, I want to continue reading and borrowing books from the library throughout the year. And then I've also got continue redoing the phase of the month list, which is something I did last year, where I picked at the end of each month, pick a favourite, and then it just helps me again, like with my lists and things. And then the last challenge I've got on here is the Audrey Reading Challenge, which is set up by the lovely Audrey App, which is an app predominantly that they release. It's a non-subscription app that they really have classics on there. You buy per book, and they've got a wonderful range of classics on there, and it's just a really, really brilliant app, and I want to support it. And from that, the Audrey Reading Challenge, they've got one that's like read 4 classics from their selection, or one that's like read 12. I've gone for the 4 just to start with, just to be gentle myself. But yeah, highly recommend you check that out. And again, I will link the Instagram for that in the description. So those are my goals. Those are how I did last year. Let me know what goals you've got set. Let me know what you've got planned for this year, and let me know how you got on last year with your goals. I hope that. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Thank you for your lovely comments as always. Yeah, take care and sending you lots of love. Goodbye.